people see me in Singapore would say I'm a Malay, and I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's only through the conversation and then it's, oh, but Mariam, you're not really Malay, right? What is your ICCR then? Oh yeah, you Arab, no wonder lah, you know.
My journey through being classified as Indian has always been slightly tricky for me. Because I grew up, obviously spending an equal amount of time with both my father and my mother, and my relatives accordingly. And I never felt that I could represent my mother's side, which is the Chinese side, because I was only ever allowed to be Indian.
At that time I was going to England. I was applying to actually stay there for an extended period. All these forms to fill. There's one form that actually allows you to tick your ethnicity. 34 categories. Yes! I'm going to find something that meets me.
Did you find it?
Others. Give me 4 and I'm under others. Give me 34 and I'm under others. So I'm not so sure whether it's having more necessarily better.
Your point would be that once you have a racial categorization system, it's never going to be neat, or it's never going to be perfect, or it's never going to reflect reality.
Exactly.
I would say let's examine the functional way we use CMIO. What is it actually good for, and what does it fail at? What has it become a kind of lazy shortcut to put people in boxes for? So if we're going to keep it, then let's really look at how we've been doing things, and not just keep doing it because they've always been done away, because the colonial force they broke through decided to split us up that way.
I'm trying to be a bit more radical. I'm just exploring the idea, do we necessarily need to tick just one box? Which race we belong to? And it's only one box. Can we tick 2 boxes, even 3 boxes? Depending on how and who we identify ourselves with. For example, being Chinese doesn't mean I'm less Malay. If I am from a family which is because of interracial marriages and all, like being more Chinese doesn't mean I'm less Singaporean. So to me, this identity is never a zero-sum game.
I feel like without enough of an intervention at a very primary level, Singapore won't look like Singapore, And so I feel personally that it is still necessary.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I've heard this argument before.
Sure.
I don't understand. What's the problem with having a Malay bloc, or an Indian bloc, or a Eurasian bloc, or a Filipino bloc, or a Bangladeshi bloc, or a Malayali bloc? I don't see the problem.
Because I think having people intermix in a common space, in a fundamental common space that they can share, promotes, I think, understanding. It promotes time spent with each other, and it blurs the divisions that could, stem from not understanding each other.
Just because I put a Chinese person, or I put 7 Chinese people next to 1 Indian person and 2 Malay people, doesn't mean that they've integrated as a community.
On a personal level, it did for me, though. I learned quite a bit about the culture of my Malay friends because I grew up next to them. We went to the Pasar Malam together, and if I can relate the story, I once bought a chicken wing from a makcik at the Pasar Malam, and I turned to my friend, and I asked him, how do I say thank you to the makcik? And then he looks at me mischievously, my Malay friend, and he says, you tell the makcik, ni manam nak bawa anak. Tonight you're going to make babies. That was an important point for me. Through that, became very close to my friend. And humor and all that was a conduit for it. And it only happened because he was my neighbor.
I'll take your point that just putting people next to each other is not enough. But I don't think that was ever the intent, because I tell you what I feel is, if you had towns and they were all of a certain race, you may not just by having people together, you don't automatically force this type of behavior. But if you remove that mixing, you remove the opportunity for this type of behavior. And there are also downstream effects, because most Singaporeans would go to a primary school close to them. So if you had people living with people of fundamentally the same race, you would mean that our schools would be far less mixed than they are today. You wouldn't have mosques in every town. You wouldn't have food of every shape and variety everywhere. So I fully agree with you. Just putting people together ain't going to solve anything. You've got to then, and a lot of people would say that there is a lot of other work going on. We can argue about the effectiveness of that, but I think if you don't put people next to each other, you lose the opportunity for that thing to happen downstream.